Hi everyone, it's Catherine here from Minky Fingered Cat. I thought I'd do something a bit different. I obsessively watch people like, no, I can't think of any of them. Coffee and cards type. Excuse me. And, well, lots of people who do all these sort of like card kits. So they either have a Simon Says Stamp card kit or My Favourite Things, or there's all loads of them. And I would love some of those stamp kits. They're just fab. They're like a monthly subscription. You get a stamp set, papers, and random bits and bobs in there. And people make some fabulous cards. And I obsessively watch their YouTubes. I can't, however, justify the cost because most of them are based in America. In fact, all of them that I found that I liked were based in America. And it's adding on at least an extra $15 just for the postage. And I can't justify that, certainly not on a monthly basis. However, I do subscribe to Making Cards and Papercraft magazine, and the reason I do is I love their craft papers. I've just fallen in love with quite a few of them. They've got some funky patterns, great sentiments, funky images, all sorts of fun stuff. And this month's comes with the Catitude stamp set, which I absolutely adored. Now, I'm not called Inky Fingered Cat because I have a massive affinity for cats. Don't really. If anything, I like dogs more. My first name's Catherine. My husband calls me Cat. That's why I'm Inky Fingered Cat. But I just saw these cat stamps and I was like, oh, I love them. So I thought this would be the perfect set to do a how many cards can you make out of this kit kind of thing by making my own. So obviously I'm going to add my own media to it, so I'm going to do lots of different designs, lots of different styles, using the stamps, using the papers, using the printed images. I'm sure I'll find something to do. No idea how many I'll make at this point. You will know because you'll have seen it already on the description of the video, but obviously I have no idea at this point. I have grabbed out some cardstock, so I've got various different cardstocks. You really shouldn't see the state of my desk to the right hand side, it's just a big tip. I'll probably grab some yellow and some white as well. So I've pulled these out based on some of the colours in the papers, thinking well they'll go along with. But obviously I'm going to grab some stencils, different mediums. I'll probably grab the odd stamp, but probably just because these cute little sentiments are very cute, but they're probably not perfect for everything that I'll make. So I may end up making use of a couple of other stamp sets, but just for basics like happy birthday or hello or thanks or whatever I end up making. I haven't yet looked through my magazine, so there's always inspiration in the magazine with what to do with the papers that come with the set, but I don't want to look at that because I don't want to be swayed into doing what somebody else has done. So in fact I'm going to also get rid of that, although I am going to chop this up, so I might use some of that funky chevron type pattern. Always comes in handy to have things like that, so I might keep that and chop it up a little bit to go in with. Got my papers, got my stamps, time to get going. So I'm going to do it as a voiceover for a change. I have speeded this up, so it is still quite fast, but hopefully with me talking you through what I'm doing it'll make more sense. So I've taken one of the cat images and a piece of Whisper White, and I've stamped the first image with first generation ink, and then the rest of them I've created my own little pattern paper, and I've done it with second generation ink, so it means that this focal cat is the one that's going to stand up. I've coloured it in just with a bit of water brush and some vintage photo ink, and then I've chosen the little paw print stamp and stamped that up again with the vintage photo, and then just added a few splatters. So creating my card blank out of some white linen card and doing a top folding card, and it needed a little bit of definition on the edge, so I've just inked it up again with that vintage photo. And now it's time to do my sentiment, but I can't quite decide how I want to do the sentiment, so it doesn't quite go to plan. I have to start again and fiddle around. In my defence, it was quite late at night when I was filming this, and I was probably very tired. So I do make a few mistakes throughout this card and a couple of the other cards, but I managed to fix them all in some way. So this one, fairly simple, clean-ish card. What I do end up doing is adding a few liquid pearls, just dotted around, just to add some dimension. And that is card number 1. Okay, card number 2, decided to use this bright, funky paper from the pack. But I'm not really thinking, so the size that I end up cutting this to makes no sense, so I have to do it again. Not that it'll go to waste, because I'm sure I'll use it at another point. And then this panel of Whisper White that I've got it's not the right size, and then I fiddle with another piece of paper, and eventually I end up sorting it out. Right, so I've got a piece of Whisper White, and I'm going to choose a different cat to stamp this time. And again, I'm going in with the VersaFine. Now, hindsight's a wonderful thing. At this point, I thought I was going to colour the cat, again using a water brush and using that more mustard Stampin' Up! Ink. It's quite an old ink I've had for ages, but it's still going strong. But then I changed my mind and decided that what I really want to do is add a bit of stenciling behind the cat. Now, I've got 100 or so stencils, so it took me quite a while to find one that I wanted to use. And I ended up using this star, which is just that bit too big for the piece of paper, but it doesn't matter. I can live with this. What unfortunately happens though is that by blending the ink over the top of it, it sort of smudges and dulls the image, and I'm not happy with the cat anymore. So I go in, try and edging it. No, I'm still not happy with that. Still not sure what I'm doing, but let's cut my card blank. And I've decided, yeah, definitely going with a yellow card blank. That makes the most sense with the colour scheme that I've gone with. Yeah, that's fine, but I'm still not happy with this. So I have a little look through my book of papers, and no, I'm still happy with that paper. Right, so I'm going to edge the edge of that stamped and stenciled panel with a black pen. I then go in and think, right, this paper's going down regardless. Sometimes you just have to plough on, but I'm still not happy. Mainly with the fact that this cat is now a little bit fuzzy, so I stamp him again. Then I stamp him over the top, which, because I'm not using a stamp positioner, isn't perfect, but do you know what? It's not a bad job. And now I'm cutting out the body of the cat because he's too skinny on his tail and his whiskers for me to cut out individually. I'm just cutting out the body, and that works perfectly. And now I'm happy. So I'm going to start grabbing sentiments, and this time I've grabbed the meow. And then I also stamp the sentiments. Oh yes, I do a bit of stamp doctoring, and I take the perfect and birthday and cut them apart so they're separate stamps. And that was card 2. Apologies, I did lose a little bit of footage on that one. And I added on the end just some glitter gems. You'll see them all on the pictures at the end. So now I've decided I want to use my pro markers, my alcohol pens, so I'm stamping this in Memento rather than in the VersaFine. And there are 2 mirror image type cats, so I stamped one of them twice and the other one once, and now I'm going to go in and colour. I keep to fairly neutral colours. They're actually mainly skin tones, I think, apart from maybe one of them. And I'm just trying to add a little bit of shading in a few areas. I think most of the ones I end up using are my brush markers rather than pro markers. But yeah, I'm using things like vanilla and blush, satin, almond, and I think it's praline. I never know how to pronounce that word. And a little bit of I think it's like a tawny brown kind of colour, I'm not entirely sure. The colouring obviously takes a little bit of time just to blend out the colours that are there, go back in over the top, faff basically. I'm not the greatest colourist, but I am very good at faffing with my colouring. And I'm very happy with them in the end. They do exactly what I want them to do. They're quite cute little things. So, getting close. I've coloured them in and now I want to die cut them. So I used my stitch circle to die cut all 3 of them. And now I'm going to create my card blank. So again, I'm using some linen cardstock to create my card blank. And again, I'm going for a top folding note. And I then think, I kind of want it floating, because the 3 cats are a little bit too big to put all on one card blank. And I've tried to keep into reasonably small cards here. So then I think, right, I want some pattern paper as well. So I've still not die cut this and I'm sort of faffing around with it. Forget that if I want to die cut them both at the same time, I do need to adhere it. So I've taken it all the way over to my die cut machine and then gone, oh yeah, helps if you adhere this down. Right, now we're going to die cut it. And this means I'm going to die cut the circle in the same place. And it's going to create a nice centre, a nice little hole, shall I say. Plus the bonus is I get 2 little die cut circles. So I want to stick it in the centre, but I don't want it so it's just on the back panel. So I'm sort of having a little think about this, and I realise if I grab some acetate, cut it to the right size, if it sits on the acetate, it'll be able to almost look like it's floating on the window. So I'm happy with this, so I stick my little acetate down, stick my little cat down, happy. Now on the back I can add the other little cat. So it's the reverse image of it, so it works perfectly. At this point I'm thinking, I'm going to stick my little cat down there, and I think, no, that's not going to work, that looks silly. So I and ah, and eventually end up back with that yellow cardstock. And I create myself, by just cutting a centimetre off the end, a slightly smaller card than the card I'm working with. And this is perfect until this point, when I have forgotten something. So I stick it all down, and I even stick another little cat on the inside. And then I'm faffing around, but I had that little strip of paper just to the bottom of the inside where there happens to be a little bit of a black smudge. You know, now no one's going to know, it's fine. And I and then I think, oh no, that 1 centimetre strip of card will work perfectly for the sentiment. So I'm going to snap my sentiment up. Now, I'm wondering how many other people have realised what I've done. So, whilst I faff with the sentiment, I will explain. I had intended for the little cat that's on the inside to be visible, and now I've gone and stuck some yellow card directly over it, so it's no longer visible. And at this point, I've still not worked out that that's what I've done. Oh yes, I do a little bit of doodling around the perfect on my birthday, because I purposely stamped it a little bit wonky. And I'm going to do me a little outlining trick again and stick the sentiment down. Now, it's around about now that I think, hang on a minute, I've done something weird. I've managed to trap my little thing inside. So now I have to take it all apart and try and fix it. So I have to get the die in exactly the right place, which takes a lot of fiddling, faffing, but I get there. And now I can go die cut the circle in that yellow cardstock as well and reconstruct my card. So, of course, I've die cut the circle and realised that this little circle's now in the way and it's visible, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just temporarily going to stick that onto that piece of card, that piece of paper that I've die cut. And now my card works as I want it to. So just going to do some finishing touches with a few sequins and add these to the card. So this was all happening quite late in the evening, and I now need to finish for the night. So on to card 4, and this time I decided to use some of those fab panels that are sort of like chalkboardy type finish, funky and positive statements. And then I have a little look through and think, which paper do I want? And I ended up with the black and white small chevron. obviously I had to team this with pink, seeing as it's got the pink in the actual image. So first I created a pink card blank, ready to stick this on. And then I also had another strip that I thought would just break up that chevron a little bit, but I don't end up having it as it looks there. So I start by just sticking down the panel, but I decide that I want to do some corner rounding. So out comes the corner rounder, which I did to the card blank as well as to the actual panel. And at this point I decided that I needed that word panel to be smaller, but unfortunately my square die was a little bit too small. So I just used my trimmer to cut it down, and again use my corner rounder to round the corners on it, and decide that I want that sticking towards the top on the panel. So I'm going to have to cut this little piece down so it actually goes across the bottom rather than the top. Oh, but yes, I then think, I want some texture to this. So I grab an embossing folder and I ink one side of it with Versamark, run it through my Big Shot, which has to happen off screen because I can't fit it on my desk. And then I put some clear embossing powder over it. So it's now going to stick in the bits that have been debossed. I think it's debossed when it goes in rather than comes up. So it gives a nice texture, a bit of shine and a bit of fun to that panel. And there we go, put it down to size. But I really want something on that still. So now I'm having a little hunt through all of my flowers. Most of them are sort of Artful Days goodie box flowers. Trying to find a flower that's the right colour pink and that's flat enough, and I think I found it here. It's not quite flat, so I need to do some adjustments because it's got a little bit of a plastic back on it that does eventually end up coming off. But yeah, so I have to do a bit of faffing to glue this down, and I use my Pinflair glue gel to glue it down because I know that once it's dried it's completely secure. But as you can see, each layer sort of falls apart because I've cut it down to the point where it no longer sticks together. But that gives me a chance to sort of rearrange it and faff with it a little bit, and now I'm happy. Okay, card number 5. So this time again I go for some of the printed elements, so it's like a cut apart sheet I suppose, and this is the cats, but they're a much larger size than the stamps. And I decide that I want to cut this little fella out, and I leave a little white border because it's too fine to be able to cut right up to the edge, especially around things like the whiskers. And I've got that little die cut circle that you remember from previously. So I'm going to die cut a circle of some more pattern paper that's going to sit inside the white circle. And that is perfect. And so this is again paper that's within that the set from Making Cards magazine. And I'm just going to adhere my little cat, or rather large cat, onto there. And now I'm going to create a background, and I've decided to choose the colours that go with that pattern paper, and fresco chalk finish paints from Paper Artsy, which I love my frescoes. And at first I started applying it with a paintbrush, and I thought, no, I'll go in with a brayer. It's much quicker and it gives a more organic look. Now, it so happens that the colours that I chose for all of them were all translucents rather than opaques, so that's quite a challenge and a bit different, but it does mean that they layer beautifully and they really blend nicely. And then I just want some little splatters to go with the fact that I've got the dotty paper, so I use my black gesso. And then just cleaning my mat up so that it's okay and giving it a good dry. And I keep bringing the element back in just to see what I think, and now I've decided I want to do a bit more stamping. So I'm going to choose the little paw print and the little meow. there's two meows on the stamp set. One's a curvy one and it's a little bit bigger than this, and this is the small one that's straight, but I just stamped it randomly at angles, stamped both of them, sorry, randomly at angles all over. And then I'm adding a good amount of adhesive to this, so I had some my ATG and some liquid glue, partly because it's a textured background with acrylic paint and I need to make sure it's going to adhere properly. So I'm umming and ahhing about what kind of card blank I want, but I decide no, I do want a white card blank, and this time instead of a top folding note card, which is what I normally do, I went for a side fold, and so that's a bit different for me. It's not normal, but love how that looks. Now I decided to use a stamp from a different stamp set just because I wanted the words to be a little bit bigger. What I found with those stamps in the stamp set, the sentiments, is they are really quite small sentiments, and I didn't think they'd look right with that particular cap. So on to card number 6. And this time I've gone for one of the big sentiments that's like a brush script sentiment, which I love. And I'm going to die cut this out. I know it's going to slightly go over the bottom of the T at the bottom, but it's fine. It still works perfectly fine as a sentiment. So that's going to be my focal image. I've now got to decide what I'm going to do with it. So I'll start with a piece of white, which I don't end up using, and then I go and I have this idea of layering up a few different patterns. So this is me sort of cutting the patterns down and deciding what to do. So there's one pattern there, and I think, why am I having a white card if I'm just going to completely cover it up? Then I'm umming and ahhing and deciding whether I want a cat on it or not, and so no, don't. But I decide I need less of that chevron type pattern. And then I've still got a strip of pink left over, so I'm going to cut that so that I've got a little border, and then I end up cutting it in half, so I've got 2 borders. That's the plan. So I had intended to tuck my little pink border behind, and then I forgot, so it's now going on the top, but that's fine. I'm quite happy with how it ends up looking. So there we go. But I feel like it needs something else behind that circle, so I take my square stitched shape die and I die cut that out to black. But I don't want it straight on, I want it slightly hanging off, and then I think, oh yeah, that's going to work. So I put that down, trim off the edge, and I think, yeah, that'll probably work, but I want to do something with this sentiment. So I coat it with Versamark and then coat it with clear embossing and heat set it. And this gives it not just a shine, but a bit of texture. So I'm happy with that, but I want another layer, so I go in again. Now, the problem with doing this on a reasonably thin paper is you do end up with it becoming a little bit waxy looking. So I decided at that point that that black wasn't quite right. So I took some vellum and I die cut a slightly smaller square. Oh, sorry, this is before I've die cut the smaller square. But I die cut a smaller square in order to fit that within the black, which I really like. And then obviously where the glue is, you won't be able to see that because the other piece is going to be on top. But it just adds that sort of like lighter layer in between. I do trim it down a little bit as a panel because I want it to sit on my card blank, and this time I decided I'm going for sort of the tealy coloured. I think it's called Tranquil Tide, this particular one, and I decide I want it butting up against that edge but with a border around the other 3 sides, so happy with that. Oh, I also did round the corners on 2 sides, I think, on that one. Okay, card number 7. Again, I've gone for one of the cats that's on the printed thing, and again I'm just cutting it out with a bit of a border. Sorry, it's off the screen. I often cut a little bit nearer to me than where my camera sits, especially if I'm fussy cutting. So at this point I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I think I'm going to use that spotty paper again. I think I'm going to put my cat there. Again, my corner rounder came out quite a lot during the session. I just thought some of those spotty papers in particular lent themselves to being corner rounded. And now I'm taking the Hello sentiment, brush script sentiment, cutting that out, and again going to corner round it and put that up in the right hand corner. Oh, rather than matting it, I've decided to just go around with my pen again. This is such an easy way of just adding a bit of a border without having to mat it and layer it all the way up. So I'm happy with that, but I am going to then do the same with my yellow. Go all the way around that one too. And then adhere that one down. So again, out come the corner rounder. And I quite like my little cat sitting across the bottom. So I'm just going to use some liquid glue to adhere that cat. And then going to mount it on its card. So I think at this point I'm obviously cutting a card blank, yes. So I'm going to go for a side fold landscape card and pop that on there. And then I'm going to find some gemstones because I think it just needs some sort of bright orange gems. And these are neon glitter gems. I think they're from Paper Mania or somewhere. Okay, on to card number 8. Well done if you're sticking with me this long, because I don't know how they managed to make 10 cards and keep the videos so short. I'm already on about 25 minutes or something. Anyway, this one I decided to mount most of the stamps onto the card. And there's a bit of fiddling for this one, just getting them into place, and then I'm umming and ahhing, not quite sure what I'm doing. But anyway, I've lifted them all up, and then I don't have any of those misty clever corners. But that's what I really need at this point, is a set of clever corners. So instead, I make my own out of a bit of black cardstock that was just sitting on the side. It's just enough for me to be able to mount them up, have them snap off the edge, and make sure that I'm putting the card back in the same place if I'd needed to stamp them more than once. Now actually I didn't need to. This time I'm using white embossing rather than clear embossing, so you really won't be able to see anything. I do need to get a new Versamark though, because my Versamark is actually a little bit dirty, so fortunately these were being done with white embossing rather than clear, otherwise you'd have been able to see some of the marks that had come off the Versamark. Right, so now I'm just going to rearrange a couple of my stamps just to fill in that last area up at the top that wasn't quite covered. And again, white embossing powder and heat set that. So now I've used completely the wrong cardstock, I realise, and I was contemplating blending over the top, and then I thought, no, I'm going to grab my Distress Oxides and do a smoochy background. But then I've realised I'm using my Whisper White, and Whisper White does not work particularly well with water. So I go with it, but I have to say this is probably the wettest card I've ever made in my life. And it just soaks right through. Now, the fab thing about Distress Oxide is how it goes, that beautiful sort of chalky finish, and I'm super happy with it. I do add a little bit more ink and a little bit more water and drying it up again. It's time I use my heat tool, but to be honest, it is the wettest piece of card in the world at this point. It's not card, it's just floppy and it's a big wet mess. But never mind, it sort of works, does what I wanted it to do. And again, I've got that fabulous spotty paper and I've mounted it on some black, and that's going to make a fabulous layer underneath that Distress Oxide layer. So I take a different piece of card. This time I've got that linen cardstock, and again I add the Distress Oxide. And look at the difference. Even though I've used exactly the same colours, the reaction that the cardstock has to it is completely different from how the Whisper White had reacted. Anyway, this time I have added a stamped cat, and I've done it with VersaFine and added clear embossing over the top. So this is going to make him really proud. Sorry, not really proud. Be very, very much the focal image. And again, I'm going to die cut him from the card using my oval, and also die cut a piece of black to act as the frame. So you can see how the orange cat that I've just added, this little oval frame, is a completely different colour, even though I've used exactly the same colours. And yes, my paper is still wet, so I'm trying my hardest to dry it with my tool. And what happens is I then try to put my snail on. That won't work because it just lifts a layer of the paper because it's so wet. So liquid cardstock, liquid glue, and then some foam tape in order to pop up that oval. And I and ah then over whether this is finished. Oh, that's what I do. I now mount it on a card blank. I'd made my card blank a little bit long, so I did have to go off and chop it off a little bit. So mount it on my card blank, and now what do I need? So I've gone and got some black enamel accents, and I'm just dotting that on there, and then I make a big boo-boo, and I try to erase it, and no, it's not going to work, so I've just got a big smudge there at the moment. Oh, so I obviously missed a bit of filming. I have created my sentiment by heat embossing the sentiment, and this is now going to cover up that splodge. Perfect. I say perfect because then I make another mess, but never mind. So again, outlining. That seems to have been the theme, I think, for quite a lot of these cards, is outlining my little sentiments, but I just felt like they needed them to add some definition. So I'm going to glue this, go over the top, and then watch what happens. I stick my finger in one of the other enamel accents dots. So, never mind, I'm going to rectify that in a minute. And by this point my glue's deciding it doesn't want to come out. There we go. So, I've added my sentiment, and now I'm having to go back with my glossy accent. So I'm just going to make a few of these dots a lot bigger. And that'll cover up the one that I made a mess of. Okay, we're on card number 9. What do I do for card number 9? Right, well, I've taken a different paper this time. This time I've got watercolour paper, watercolour card, and I'm adding the ink with my water brush. But somehow I still managed to make a right old mess of this. So I've got a big old streak of blue that I wasn't expecting. Had originally thought I was going to be doing this as 2 colours. I'd have the orange at the top and the blue in the bottom, but I end up just going blue all over, and I swap from my water brush to a normal paintbrush in order to just get the colour down easier. So I'm giving it a good dry, and now I've decided I'm going to turn this into a pattern background. So I've taken a marble stamp, background stamp, and that's just added some fab swirls onto the background. So again, I have chosen one of these sentiments, and I've chosen a sentiment that's got the turquoise in it, which was partly why I grabbed the turquoise and orange, to be honest, because I knew I wanted to use that sentiment panel. And I've decided I want to use the black, but what I also want is a chevron going across to act as a pattern. So I'm sort of cutting it and deciding, do I or don't I? So apologies, this takes a little while just to cut through the pattern. And I have to admit, I don't do a perfect job, but I probably do enough of a job for me to be happy. So I'm just going to cut those last little bits out. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So I am going to stick that on. I've chosen different glue this time just because it was easier. My little bottle of white glue was not coming out. And now I'm going to stick that down. And firstly, can I just say that background looks fab. I'm really happy with that. Now, there were some little bits of white on that I wasn't happy, where my trimmer has just left a little bit of a frayed edge. So I decided that instead I would I'd just outline it with the black pen, and then I've gone and cut myself a layer of white cardstock just to give it a frame again. It's one of those things, you cut it so it's not got a frame and then you add a frame back. It doesn't make much sense to me, but that's what happened. I think it just made it a better proportion for the card that I was actually working with. So again, side folding note card. And at this point I think, right, what else can I do to it? So I add Wink of Stella all over the white writing, the find and the everything. Now, I didn't do the neatest of jobs of this, but you know what? It looks fabulous at the end. I'm not sure if the photos will pick it up or not, but I was really happy with the shimmer that this gave it. And I was quite happy with that card to say it was finished. So we're on to card number 10, and as you can see, I've sort of taken the inspiration from the previous card and decided to use that chevron and cut it off. So I've got the bit that was already cut off, and then I've just cut off the other side. And I'm just adding a little strip of black along the centre where there was actually a little bit of a print issue going on. And I'm just stamping a few of the cats. Now you'll go, where's the rest of the cats? I decided I was only going to cut, I was only going to stamp partial cats because I wanted them to sort of poke out from that black line. So I've trimmed them off and I'm just cutting them out again with a little border. And yeah, quite happy with those. Not quite sure how I'm going to do it yet, but they need a bit of colour. So again, I've used Whisper White and I'm using my white, I'm using the water. Not ideal, but never mind. On such small areas, it's absolutely fine. So I used a couple of different colours. I had the Tangerine Tango, the More Mustard, and then I just added a little bit of Early Espresso too, just to add a little bit of shading. They are quite small images, these stamps, so perfect for little bits of colouring, don't have to be perfect. And now I'm just gluing them down. And I've glued 2 to the left and 1 to the right. And then I think, I've got a little idea here. So I put my block over it to dry, and then I've stamped another one. And I'm going to colour it again using exactly the same colour scheme as the last ones. In fact, it does end up a little bit more orange, I think, this one, but never mind. And this time, I think I'm going to stick it down so it's upside down. Because, do you know what? Cats get everywhere. So, apologies about the light reflecting, by the way. There's not much I can do about that at the moment. This is the setup at the desk. This is the setup at the desk. So, again, I stamped my sentiment. This time I've chosen Wishing You A, and then Perfect Birthday. And I'm not quite sure where I'm sticking them yet, but yeah, they'll do. But out she comes with the pen and the outlining. Told you, it's the theme of these cards is definitely been outlining tiny little sentiments. So, grab those out and I'll stick them down. So, I've managed to make 10 cards. I'm really happy with all of them. I can't say it was the easiest process in terms of I did quite a lot of fiddling around and didn't always manage to make things as I was expecting and without any dramas. That one in particular really needs to be straightened out, so I'm going to have to lay that underneath something so that it sticks down properly. But there's some really fun and funky cards in there. So this is probably one of the longest videos I've ever made. I really, as I said, I have no idea how people do this in a shorter time. I managed to make 10 cards because I've done this in 2 crafting sessions and a lot of editing of videos. I probably could have edited a few more bits out, and obviously I've speeded it up. I don't know how people talk for that long either for their videos, so hats off to the people that do. But I hope you've enjoyed that. I have so much stash left that I've not used, so there's loads of paper bits that are left already cut up. I've got full sheets left, I've got loads of images left, and obviously I've still got all my stamps that I can reuse. So I imagine there's plenty more I can make with this, but for now there's 10 cards, and all a little bit different. So if you did enjoy that, and well done for sticking to the end if you've managed to, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and of course subscribe if you want to see more. I don't know whether I'll have another go at this 10 card thing or not. You never know. But until next time, bye.